ぶっかけうどん
Hello, and welcome back to Binging Last Season, where this week we're talking about 3 anime that do one thing particularly well. And we're starting with Zatsu, because I'm pretty sure I'm using that one for clickbait. Zatsu, That's Journey, is about an 18-year-old aspiring mangaka named Chika, who has her foot in the door of a company because of an achievement in a contest that she won, but she can't quite get any of her drafts accepted by her editor, and she feels like she's hitting a wall. So she says, you know what, forget this, I'm putting a poll on Twitter to decide what direction I should go in, and then I'm just going to travel somewhere in Japan. And watching the first episode did legitimately feel like a beginner's guide to how to travel in Japan. Like, hey viewer, this is what you say when you're asking if there's a hotel room open for the night. This is what you say when you're leaving your hotel. This is how you perform X or Y courtesy, and this is how you find something to do in a specific area. But it was only really in episode 2 that I realized how far the extent of this being a Japan travel guide went, because in episode 2, spoiler alert, she goes to Matsushima, which is an area up near Sendai on the ocean. And it's notable because I've been to Matsushima when I was slumming it around in Japan, staying in various business hotels and choosing where to go, just, I don't know, based on the flip of a coin. I don't have Twitter. I didn't do any polls. The point is, the way that they portrayed Matsushima is literally what I experienced, like to a T. The very specifics are there on screen. They draw everything literally exactly how it looks. Like, I cannot stress enough how much I felt like I had just been warped back in time to my Matsushima visit. And I realized how accurate this show really was and how dedicated it was to just showing you like, hey, this is literally what it looks like to travel in Japan. But it's not just the positives, because they could have done that. They could have just said, hey, Japan is the most beautiful country on the planet. These are all the beautiful things you're gonna see if you come here, buy your plane ticket today. Pay no attention to the check from the Japanese government that I'm stashing in my pocket. But it wasn't exactly like that. The number of times that things go wrong in this show is more than you would expect from an anime that is meant to be relaxing. But it's honest. It's more truthful to, what travel is actually like. Hey, if you don't check ahead of time to make sure that the thing that you want to see is actually available to the public, you are going to get punished when you get there. If you don't get extremely lucky, you gotta make sure, and you gotta look into things. You can't just wing it and expect everything to go perfectly. And the show is pretty honest about that type of stuff. But it's also accurate in that if you do wing it like our main character does, you will find something interesting, like 99% of the time. It's practically impossible to have a boring vacation in Japan. There's a reason why the majority of their citizens travel inside of the country for their vacations. It's because the country is just fantastic. I mean, between the geography, going straight from the ocean to the mountains, even out in the sticks, you will find something just breathtakingly beautiful to look at. And when it comes to specific activities, areas and monuments and shrines and, skeevy buildings that look like they're run by the mafia, but then you step inside and it's this new and interesting experience and it's actually really well maintained, and you're just like, wow, why does the outside of your building look like that? I would never enter that building in my home country, Japan. You kind of need to warn people about this. I do like the fact that they put a little bit of that into this show to encourage you to step out of your comfort zone. So as a travel guide, it's exceptional. It's just the story is kind of weak. At some point while watching this, I remembered, hey, I'm not actually watching an advertisement. I'm watching an anime. That means it needs to have certain things like a story and progression. And while the characters are all very lovable and they go through certain things that, did touch out to my heartstrings a little bit, the story is just lacking because the show really does want to focus on just showing you Japan and what it's genuinely like. And in that sense, it is like a 10 out of 10. But nailing that geographical highlight reel means there's just less time and attention to be given to the story and characters. I think it's possible to do both, but I don't really expect it. And this show chose the basket to put all of its eggs in. I still gave it an 8 out of 10 because I respect what they did here. For the record, this show is an iyashike, which means it's meant to be healing for the soul and soothing to watch. And in that sense, they did very much nail it because man, just looking at Japan does soothe the soul. I mean, don't call me a weeb. Get out of my comments. Actually, get in my comments. Call me a weeb. I need the interaction nowadays. I also watched Teogonia this week, and that was weird. I'll be completely upfront with you guys here. Watching the first few episodes, the only thing I was really thinking was, wow, this is slop. This is like, this is super slop. It's a Fantasy Squared anime and maybe isekai, but they never confirmed that in the show, so I don't want to call it that. The main character's name is Kai, but they never try to make you like him, so I'm not going to do that either. Because the thing that makes Teogonia good is not the characters, it's not the writing, it's not even the visuals. It's the setting. The thing that made me stick with Teogonia after maybe one of the worst opening episodes I've ever seen in an anime that I actually ended up liking was the world, because it is so interesting. These ideas that they sort of just like put out there. Like in episode 1 even, they talk about these things called godstones, which is a casing next to your heart. It doesn't actually replace your heart, and it contains what is essentially your life force. And these species, demons and humans, are fighting each other, and when they defeat each other, they take each other's godstones and they drink from it. They consume the life force of others to, add to their own power. And it's not just this, but other interesting concepts that take place in this story that really sort of speak to you and say like, well, this is non-standard. This is not the typical, God gave me superpowers. I mean, actually it is. Hold on. So basically, somebody can form a pact with a land god, which is a god that dwells in a certain area. Essentially, what it's saying is that areas within the earth have power that give rise to these gods, and these gods can form pacts with humans who then become guardian bearers, but still need to consume other people's godstones to become even more capable and powerful. Basically, it's a setting and a power system that you really don't see often, and I think is fundamentally interesting and feels pretty original. I like a lot of the ideas going on here, and later on in the series, apart from the first few episodes, they actually get better at executing stuff that's fun to watch and interesting to look at, and making the characters slightly more likable. Again, I never really liked Kai. I never really cared about him. There are other characters that I do find more interesting and likable. He himself as a lead is kind of just annoying, but that's fine because the you don't need the lead to carry this show. This show does one thing exceptionally, and it is the world. And that was enough for me to give it a 7 out of 10. And look, I may not have explained that very well because I'm not like an encyclopedia. I don't even think you can make paper out of celery. The point is, between Teogonia and Bye Bye Earth, two anime that seem to hinge on the setting to sell the show, Teogonia did it better.
And I promise it does get better in the back half, guys. I'm not lying. I swear on my grave, on my future grave, I'm not lying. On my past grave, I swear on my days of future past grave, I am not lying. You won't be bored to death.
Hey, speaking of which...
Let's talk about death! Woo!
Once Upon a Witch's Death feels like anime Harry Potter, and I do mean that as a compliment. The magic system is more obscure and mysterious rather than just relying on the elements, and the alternative reality modern day setting does really well at imbuing magic into things that we consider to be mundane. To be honest, this show actually did a lot of things really well. It gave us Meg, who is one of the most likable and well-rounded main characters that I have seen in a while. It made me care about the history of the setting, about things that had already happened off screen, and it approached the topic of death with the weight that it actually deserves without drowning in the hopelessness and despair of it all, without relying on really bringing you down to that negative level. If anything, Once Upon a Witch's Death feels like it actually only did one thing wrong, and that's that every once in a while, the writer, who is exceptional, would hand the pen and paper to a 12-year-old in the same room and let them write for a while and see how that worked out. In one scene, Meg will be really empathetic and understanding, and in another, she'll tell somebody who just lost a family member that it's all gonna work out because she's gonna be really awesome one day. Sometimes the significance and the cleverness of certain dialogue really shines through, and then other times it feels like they just phoned it in. Now, to be fair, this isn't happening most of the time. Most of the time, I would say this is like really great, but every once in a while, something would happen that would make me point at the screen and go, that's dumb. And the fact that it was surrounded by such brilliant writing only made it stand out more as poorly written. I still can't decide if it's an 8 or a 9 out of 10, so I'm giving it an 8.5 for this video. And I know technically I'm breaking my own rules here, but you don't know that. Cite your sources. I never made a channel intro video explaining how any of this works. In my system, the better anime could have a lower score. 1 out of 10 could be my favorite. I mean, it's number 1. You don't know. All these numbers could be completely arbitrary. I could have been lying to you for the past 10 minutes.
I'm wearing a lead breastplate.